In conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music, and gaming. Only on Hungama's Women Game Changers podcast.
Hi, welcome to Hungama's celebration of the 50 Game Changers 2023. Over this season, you'll get to know women who are chalking their own path and paving the way for the multitudes to follow in the field of entertainment across movies, music, and gaming. I'm Ronak Roy from Hungama, and it is my pleasure to welcome the dream catcher, Atika Chauhan, the girl who started with real stories as a journalist to real stories with a real soul and a successful and intentional scriptwriter in Bollywood with Chapak, Margarita with a Straw, Guilty under her belt. Atika has broken every mold as a great representation of women leading the entertainment business and delivering in a way that we hope to see more of. Hi Atika, thank you so much for taking the time to share the knowledge and shorten the learning curve.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm just not really feeling worthy of being heaped with so much praise. I'm just glad that my work has been noted and I made it to the list. What a hot list to be on. So thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, we're delighted to have you here. We're delighted to have you on the list. And I think more women need to be more comfortable with praise. Because you've really been able to create a mark. You've also been able to show up and deliver in a space where you're not seeing so many women. In how long it took you to get here?
Actually, the answer lies in the question itself. It's a really interesting, good question that you've given me. It's not so much about were there enough women in the line of work that I was in. When I began, there were enough women. Maybe the majority of the writers were male, but were the thing to answer or to question is, were there enough feminist writers? Were there enough writers representing feminine gaze? Were there enough writers empowering women where it really mattered? So there weren't.
Yes.
And that's where I was at deep conflict, and that's why it took so long. It took 12 years for someone to actually acknowledge that my presence mattered, my voice mattered. And the only thing that when I look back at my career is when they say, Atika, tum dialogue likhti ho, some of my insensitive male colleagues sometimes would like to dismiss me as just a dialogue writer, which I'm not.
Right.
I've done actually, of all my released work, 50 to 60% is screenplay work, but right. I have heard that tark in the subtextual snides of my male contemporaries who just like to dismiss me sometimes as a dialogue writer because that just really boosts their ego.
It's reductive.
Yes, they look at it like that, but to me the answer always is कि मैं dialogue लिखती हूँ, but मैं actually जेंडर लिखती हूँ बेसिकली. तुम राजस्थानी में लिखते हो, तुम पंजाबी में लिखते हो, मैं जेंडर लिखती हूँ. So what I bring to the dialogue of the film is a gender lens, and that is why it took me for 15 years to practice this and then to make it an expertise.
I want to ask you, at the end of the day, the industry is a business. You have to look at the risk-reward ratio as well when you're doing this. How do you accommodate both India and Bharat in those decisions?
There is a ikigai of India and Bharat somewhere in between, a subset that exists, which is constantly changing and evolving, and there is a room for you to negotiate. So my intentions are pretty clear, while the rest of it is my acceptance that it's a game of moving goalposts, and there is a lot of disappointment, and I'm already after first few years in Bombay, seeing the kind of systemic uphill task I was set against. I realized that I won't be able to take on this battle unless I'm strategic. And I have no qualms in saying this, that I use a lot of strategy at this stage. Just to answer how you said how you
Right.
manage it, I manage it through already anticipating what will be my pushback,
Right.
and I know how to. I have learned how to veil what I want in a way when I ask for something, and even when I actually tell it in the film.
Right.
Which is why my work is actually medicine which has a sugar coating.
Right. Now tell me, how does the creative process work for you in an ideal scenario and also in a more real setup? How do you go about the creative process? Do you typically work on, this is a story that I have the germ of an idea, I want to work on it and then build that out? Or also the other way around, where somebody comes to you with the idea, and how do you, in those collaborations, how do you reconcile the tone and the language? Because yours is a modern but a real India. It's not fantasy, it's not elitist, it's not...
It's a very chicken and egg situation for most industry writers right now, and has traditionally been, which is that what comes first, your speculative work, your speculative voice, or your ability to be able to collaborate with the best filmmakers. And even so, this is the thing, no one, the business that I am in, I can't exist independent of my other collaborators.
No man lives in a vacuum.
Especially in the film industry, because it is an extremely collaborative business.
Yes.
I can write the best screenplay possible, but if I do not find the right team or do not find the right actors, like, I'm really dependent. I am not writing a novel. So which means I already know that we are playing a cricket game. I'm not playing squash, I'm playing cricket, which means I have to work in a system which will have more people. I'll have to engage with more people and have to find the right team. When you say what comes, so for me anyway, the idea is to, when you say is it, how does the process work? Is it my speculative work which then goes to directors, etc.? That's one way of traditionally doing things, but the other way is that you have proved yourself enough in the industry, and then you have people looking for you to bring something to the table. So you have your pet collaborators, like either your producers who have faith in you or directors who have faith in you, who are constantly sort of re-employing you for ideas that are at this stage nascent, and they want to then like discuss it with you, and then you are thrashing out the story with them. So it's like you're tribing with the right people and finding those stories together, knowing that you are like-minded in so many ways. And the other way to do it is, like, for example, at this stage...
Can you actually share with me some of the people that you really do enjoy vibing with, that, you know, that sort of it becomes a little bit more of a creative jam session, and then you find that the best work emerges out of that?
I mean, actually, all projects that I've worked on have been extremely inspiring. The processes have been great. But I mean, if I were to ask to pick a few people, at this moment, maybe because they are my most recent projects, and also I've grown older around those projects.
Right.
I find myself extremely happy working with Ruchi Narayan, who was my director of the film Guilty.
Yeah.
I'm writing another film for her now as we speak this.
Congratulations, and we can't wait to see
that. And then there's Hansal Mehta, who I have been a big fan of all my life. I kept trying to get something going with him for a while. Didn't happen, but it's at this stage we are kind of like putting a show together. He's someone I really, really look up to. And then I recently worked with this young director called Sudhanshu Sarya. He's the director of Ulaj, and which is getting shot in London right now. Yes. So yeah, and it was also extremely thrilling to work with Sudhanshu. He's just brings such amazing grounded energy. He's so enthusiastic. These were my recent experiences, all of them, like the last few years, and these are relationships, work relationships that I like to nurture and foster.
So on the topic of cultural appropriation, at what point do I then have the creative freedom, or do you have the creative freedom to tell a story that isn't yours. Because isn't that the whole point of fiction writing?
That's
Because
taking it too
let's
far.
take Chhapak as an
That's
example.
taking-
You were writing on behalf of somebody. You were telling somebody else's story. You were doing it under the umbrella of a film that would go on to be commercially successful, and yet you wanted it to be as authentic to her voice, but also your own artistic integrity.
Yes.
So whether it's fictionalized or it's a biopic that is largely not fictionalized, that is a decision that you take. But are you no longer allowed to tell that story if you're not working with that person? Or even if you're working with that person, why should it not be somebody from that exact world?
The fact that I had an experiential gender view that I brought to the tale was also something that made me land into that bracket well. But I also worked hard to then merit that situation. Like, I worked really, really hard to ensure that it becomes a little more than a biopic. I also had to ensure that as a screenwriter, we are able to do justice to not just Lakshmi, but to a community of people who have been scarred by this violence. What does it say about not just
who are afraid of possibly being scarred? Because I think in watching as an audience member, when watching that, you also know that this is a reality that exists in my home city, in my home country. It's a reality.
Right.
So the fear is real, even if you haven't actually gone through it,
It's
because
gender
you know
crime.
it could happen.
It's
It is, as a woman, as the mother of a daughter.
Absolutely.
It's a fear I live with.
And then to find a way where, so that's why the Chhapak is a film where we operated from something redemptive. It did not focus so much on revenge. It did not.
Right.
It actually focused on restoration. It focused on justice. It focused on rebuilding yourself from the time that something has happened.
Right.
It did not focus so much on. It focused more on or it left you pondering that why do people do it. But it did not. That was not the mainstay of the film, because we did not want to. This was our revenge on the perpetrator, that we will not give you attention. This film is not going to be about you.
About you. It's
This
about
film is
her.
not going to be told about how men will tell this tale. This will be about a woman finding a community of women who are kind of enabling this woman to pursue her dreams. This is what that film was about. So for me, for example, I managed in that film, for example, I think I met the parameters.
One of the biggest changes that I've seen in cinema in the last 20 years, maybe 25 years from when I was a kid, is we no longer have rape scenes that are intentionally titillating to cater to masses. So when I think we were all growing up, whether it was Ranjit or the big baddies, I don't think it was represented as the act of violence that it was, as opposed to an act of sex.
Yes. It was a set piece, which was literally like the earlier version of the item song.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God that's kind of like being taken out of, edited out, or redacted out of at least mainstream vocabulary. And people have become, at least that's got. So, for example, cancel culture has had some good things that it has given. When the Twitter bajaos certain films for certain, how that there was a song that came, which spoke of a girl's complexion in a Beyonce, Goria, Beyonce bhi sharma jayegi, something like. So it talked about a woman's fair expression, and then it put Beyonce in the same
juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition very unknowingly and unwittingly. And Twitter bajawing it, then the fact that the song had to be rewritten clearly means that there's something to it. There's something to the power of cancel culture. So I would rather have it around right now. So
So I'm ambivalent. Not ambivalent, I am in two minds over it. I do think that everybody has the agency to have an opinion, which social media has been able to do. And I think it's great because I think there are a lot of unwitting biases that come into our language that filter through, whether it's from the symbolic order because you heard it from the time you were growing, to whether even sometimes hints of casteism that come in without you even realizing it's come in. For you to meet somebody and you say where are you from, and for the answer to be I'm a Tambram was never considered offensive, but it would be today.
Yes.
So I think these are just little things that. That being said, I do believe that the toxicity is extreme. I believe that the difference. You're a journalist. You were first a journalist. I think the difference was when you wrote with your byline in a paper, you, your editor and your publisher stood behind that and you were ready to take responsibility for the words that were said. And today that isn't the case. And so you say anything without fear of or thought to authenticity or accuracy, which I think becomes a big problem.
Yes, so there is a sense of like it's a Greek chorus. Twitter is a Greek chorus, and it's like a sidebar which has become more important than the main essay, which is your journalistic sort of association with the world. But then this is the melee of the world we live in. Like I actually find this anarchic sort of situation very interesting. I am not exactly. I'm kind of like I thrive on it.
But
maybe because I have so much anger in me, and I've seen the four pillars. Largely, I've been very disappointed with the system. So I think this even though the anarchy is also like with it, there are some things that are coming, of course, in the wake of it, which are toxic. They're toxic to me too. But I would still, I'm happy that the world is churning.
Right.
I'm very excited about it because there are so many things that are opening up. As a storyteller, it's so exciting to see things fluid that are being decimated so that new structures can be born. I'm actually very excited.
That's actually interesting. I wanted to ask you, I think Bollywood as a whole, I think writing in Bollywood and being the teller of stories in particular, it's been a bit of a boys' club.
Yes.
And it's been steeped in a lot of bro culture where... so tell me about, places, ways, experiences, not just of how it sort of permeates and then keeps you out, but more importantly, how do you then get your foot in the door? Because I think that's the challenge, and you're on the other side of that now.
You just work harder. You work harder and you work smarter, and you, of course, live around the pay disparity. You also see people who happen to be men who are less talented than you get traditionally work on subjects which amount for big budget films, and thus their paycheck is bigger, fatter. And the subjects that you, for example, are like being sort of accorded for are considered traditionally the type which are not very bankable. So that defines the fee structure immediately.
Yeah.
You know why you're getting less paid. You're not, even though in closed rooms you're always told that you're the smartest writer they have met, but there's always like a little apology around the fact why your fee is not as much as your male sort of peer. So this is something that has I've also worked around this a lot. I've had to process a lot, and it's one thing is to, I don't know when will I have when will I be empowered enough to have a very strong sort of when will I be able to intervene in a constructive, strong way at the system. Because it's foolish for me to let go of what I'm doing right now and just only focus on that. I can't be a full-time activist. because
Right.
my activism also has to come from my work. The more I will work, the more power I will gain to actually make real changes. So for me, it goes hand in hand. So the boys' club exists. It exists in all walks of life. It is the case even in films. But the beauty of it is that the boys are also really confused, and each time. So basically, they do protect themselves, and of course there is one kind of cinema, and then there's which is about extolling the boy club. But I love it when I see that they're also not able to sustain themselves theatrically. They also have to find different allies or different voices, and they understand that diversity is what is now going to give them certain kind of leverage or longevity. So right now, the systems are up for churning and a rethink everywhere, and it is the best time really for people like me who have been on the margins, who have been asked to keep out while the men have been talking. And I am just okay, I have another release. What have you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I hear that. Everybody sees you today. The wins, the press releases, the interviews, the woman with voice and agency. Apart from the struggle, which everybody goes through, and all of that, I would love to get a sense of the discipline and the rigor that goes into actually honing your craft to a point where you are excelling and head and shoulders above the rest.
I'm just so happy I came for this podcast, because it feels so good to know that I have the wins, because I honestly look at myself as a loser. I have only I'm sitting on the top of tons of failures. Every day I fail, Ronak. Every day I fail. I suck at what I'm trying to do. I'm never good enough for the standards that I have set for myself. And I think maybe
and I'm sure there are many voices in your life that are telling you otherwise, but please allow me to join them in saying that.
No, because I just
that's
feel
not
that
how the rest of the world
the successes,
sees you.
And the wins are the default sort of what's left behind after the amount of attempts I must have made. And what is I think the most heroic thing about me is that I never stop trying. That's, I think, must be something I love about me, because I'm just so persistent. So when you say discipline, I don't even know where does it come from. It just, there is another drive that is, and it's not compulsively driven from ambition or career. It's actually something else. I'm looking for meaning, and I'm looking for purpose, and everything else is a means to that end. For me, my relationships with people who I work with matter. How we conduct ourselves matter. Policies matter. It's not just, I am of course very passionate about cinema, but that is not the only thing that matters. I won't choose a film over toxic work politics.
Right.
I will so for me for me everything matters, and that means the game is going to be slow for me. I am not going to be the person who's going to be a stalwart writer overnight. It's not going to happen, because I will make it a slow process for me and for everyone around me, because I will want to do it right. So I already come with that kind of sort of speed. There are too many speed breakers in the game for me. Maybe what that has done to me is that because I know I'm here for the long run, because I don't see myself doing anything else. I just see myself doing exactly this for the next 50 years or 40 years or 30 years or 13 days, whatever's left. I am not in a hurry. Right. So I do this. I'm doing the same thing again and again every day, where I feel I'm that ant who keeps crawling up the wall and then keeps falling down, and then she tries it the next day, and So I'm literally that person, because from where I am, Ronak, like where my vantage point is, I just see that there is, it's a tunnel with no light at the end of it. And I may be sounding like the world is very dismal, but the truth is it is. And I actually have developed a strange kind of false cheerfulness around it. Like, I have accepted that that's the truth. I have accepted that the world's gone to the dogs. So I actually am here having a good time, humoring myself, doing my tiny thing on the side. And the byproduct of it is that some people think you are a winner, some people think you are a loser. And I am open to all kinds of exciting opinions because it's amusing.
Tell me, when it comes to networking, knowing people, knowledge sharing, what has your experience as a woman in this industry been? And going forward, how are you changing that dynamic?
A lot of the Indian film structure, industry structure, it is still very feudal. It's designed in a very like guru shishya parampara sort of way, where there are lobbies and then there are bastions, and then there will be one alpha leader around which there will be like these 10 proteges, and then there is a lot of guru dakshina that keeps percolating down, and that's how filmmaking has largely been like operating. It's only now recently with the advent of OTT in the industry that there is a real need to find an organized way to educate yourself to make films, which is because there is so much development work which gets properly paid. There is a need to recognize that we all need to enable ourselves for formatting, for writing, to make submissions which are at par with international writing. So we need to write in a certain way, and you can't fall back on what your alpha masters taught you,
right?
Because they themselves are in a need to revise or revisit how they used to write or how they used to direct. So I think that has kind of like taken the power, like sort of like challenged or questioned, tilted those systems, and that definitely has given power to everyone who has been wanting to educate themselves, and especially some of us women who were anyway not getting like enough chances in the boys club, for us to actually display our knowledge and our education and like cultivated understanding of art, right, or craft or screenwriting, which did not come from guru shishya parampara, which actually came from like watching, reading, and like actually trying to do proper screenwriting programs, where I actually have learned so much by reading screenplays. I actually have learned so much from listening to a lot of international writers talk about their processes. So for me, I'm literally like, I'm so glad there's YouTube, so yeah. I actually, because sometimes it does, I think when you are it's different when you are a student, but as a peer, everyone likes to keep their cards close to their chest, and no one is really interested in like really
knowledge sharing.
Yeah, no one is. So there is a lot of insecurity. And what you learn along the way while working with people, for example, when you're working with like a certain team repeatedly, when you're working with certain kind of filmmakers and you're seeing their sensibility up close, see what kind of like, what do they want out of you, how they give you a certain kind of writing brief, how they want you to then revise it according to how they see the world. So of course, like that is also an experience, and that also teaches you. But in terms of what can be done about it, what am I doing about it? Well, I don't intend to teach screenwriting, but what I do is I always take on every possible chance to go meet young students, and young people are my favorite. Like spending time with young people is one of my favorite activities. Like every time I've been called to any school, college, university, any platform which will immediately connect me to the minds which are at this moment impressionable, or like or are the consumers of what we are creating. That's my most favorite activity. So more than educating them, actually I go to these programs so that, and I actually always ask the kids, what do they want to see? What are the stories they are excited about? What do they actually see? Because these are the storytellers of future.
Yes.
And we need to work backwards from there. We don't need to impose what I know of the world onto them, which is what is happening with my seniors. They are still creating structures and then imposing it on a world which is not excited about consuming that stuff anymore. And I think somewhere, as an older millennial, like I have that perfect position where I know the gap between the future and the past is too wide. So maybe I'm like this perfect mediator who's able to find myself, like, and I feel more drawn towards the future generation, honestly. Like, I feel more drawn to commit myself right now to the director who's going to be the big director in 2035. I already want to find that person, because I think they are the real change makers. So I'm already working towards that, because I'm not, honest to God, I'm not excited about anyone who has been.
Right. Okay. The most striking thing about Atika is the confidence with which she accepts her worldview while acknowledging her inherently different perspective. Atika, thank you for joining us today. It was lovely talking to you and learning from you. And congratulations. We look forward to the many mountains you will still climb.
Thank you, Ronak. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I'm so glad I managed to I was allowed to talk so much.
No, I think it's been wonderful to hear you. This is Ronak from Hungama. Thank you for tuning in, and stay with us as we meet more women in entertainment who aren't just playing the game, they're changing it.
In conversation with some fascinating ladies who've changed the game in the world of video, music and gaming. Only on Hungama's Women Game Changers podcast.